Dr. Warner says, I've traveled the country. So many men that I've talked to are struggling with anxiety and depression. Mental health is a big challenge that we're facing today. What would you have to say about that? And what's your encouragement to men?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the chance to talk about this, to shine a light in that dark place, because when I was 19, I came about as close to committing suicide myself as you can without actually doing it. I was profoundly depressed. And, one of the worst things about being depressed, the hallmark of depression, what's called helplessness and hopelessness. Things are bad, they'll always be bad. Anytime you ever thought they'd be okay, you were just fooling yourself. You feel like you're really seeing things clearly for the first time, but it's really a reality distortion field. It's really not that way, but you're convinced that it is. And so when I was 19 and I was a freshman in college, I was convinced that I was stupid, that I just somehow managed to fool the admissions committee that I was smart, but now that I was with a bunch of really smart kids, it was just a matter of time before they figured out what a mistake they'd made in letting me in. And I also had this kind of existential crisis where it felt like nothing could ever bring lasting happiness. And so the combination of feeling like I was never going to amount to anything because I was stupid, and even if I did, it wouldn't matter anyway, I thought, well, why don't I just do myself in? Dead people look like they're peaceful, and I'm not, so maybe I'll just try that one. And I was about to do it, but I got so run down that I got this horrible case of infectious mono. Couldn't get out of bed. I was so exhausted. My parents saw what a wreck I was, went home, and my plan was to get well enough and strong enough to kill myself, as crazy as that sounds. But I began studying with a teacher who explained to me that our nature is to be happy and peaceful. The reason that so many people in this culture are depressed and anxious, I think that's the real epidemic. More prescriptions are spent for antidepressants than just about anything else, is that we are taught, and our whole advertising industry is based on that idea, that we get our health, we get our self-esteem, we get our well-being, we get our ability to love ourselves from doing and getting stuff from outside of ourselves. We're guys, we're trained to do stuff. But the problem is that once you set up that view of the world, if only I had more whatever, more money, more power, more sex, more beauty, more accomplishment, then I'd be happy, then I wouldn't feel so anxious and stressed and depressed, and then people would love me and I wouldn't feel so lonely. Once you set up that view of the world, although we don't usually think about it, however it turns out, you generally feel bad, because until you get it, you feel stressed. Well, I hope I get it. The stakes go up, and we know that stress isn't just a function of what you do, it's how you react to what you do. But how you react to what you do is based on our perceptions. And we think, wow, I really have to do this so I can be loved and happy. Then the stakes go way up and the stresses go up with it. If someone else gets it and you don't, it reconfirms this. We live in this very hostile dog eat dog world, that the more you get, the less risk for me, and you've got to get it while you can and all that. But even if we get it, it's very seductive in the moment. It's like, I got it, now I'm happy. But invariably, it's soon followed by either now what? It's never enough. One patient said, the view, I can't even enjoy the view from the mountain because I'm already looking over the next one. Or if it's not now what, it's often so what, big deal. It doesn't really provide that lasting meaning in our lives, which we're all craving. One patient said, the letdown that came from accomplishing a goal was so great, I made sure I had a dozen projects going at the same time. And so then we say, well, maybe this didn't do it and that one, and so the cycle continues. But what I learned from the spiritual teacher was that our nature is to be happy and peaceful. And when you practice simple, like meditation, for example, it quiets down our mind. It doesn't bring you a sense of peace and self-esteem and well-being and love. You have that already. What it does is it quiets down our mind so we can experience what's there already. My teacher was a Swami. People say, what are you, a Hindu? He'd say, no, I'm an Undu, And that's why my new book called Undo It is really homage to that it's not that we have to get all these things. We have to say, what am I doing that's disturbing my own inner health and well-being? Because I can do something about that. If it's out there, then everyone who has something I think I need has power over me. If it's me, not to blame, but to empower myself, I can do something about that. And so when I've quieted down my mind, and if you try this even just for a few minutes and you start to feel more peaceful, remind yourself, literally, that the meditation didn't bring you a sense of peace. It was already there, or well-being, or a sense of wholeness. At least it temporarily would help stop you from disturbing that. Now that may sound like a semantic, parsing of words, but it's all the difference in the world, because I can do something about it if it's me. And then if I'm starting to feel anxious or depressed, the question becomes not how can I get what I think I need to be happy and not feel this way, but what am I doing that's disturbing my own health and well-being? And then I can, do that. Now, the other thing that happens is when you quiet your mind down, you begin to become more aware and in touch with our own inner wisdom, that still small voice that speaks very clearly but very quietly. It's the one that wakes me up at 3 in the morning and says, "Hey, Dean, listen up, pay attention. You're not doing something that's in your best interest." And I've really learned to trust that voice. All of the studies we've done over the last 40 years, people thought were impossible, every one of them before we did it. But I learned it all came from that little voice saying, this is going to work. And then I'd kind of reverse engineer a randomized trial in a scientific study and found out, sure enough, that was true. The other thing that happens is when you quiet down your mind, is you begin to experience what's sometimes called a double vision. That on one level we're separate, you're you and I, me, and we can enjoy that. But we're also part of something larger that connects us, whatever name you give to that. It's kind of like in a movie projector, you have a light that goes through the film and then projects all these different names and forms and dramas on the screen. But it's also nice if you realize you're still watching a movie, that the light behind that. And then you can actually accomplish even more without getting stressed and without getting sick in the process. And all those great spiritual truths of love and compassion and altruism and forgiveness and so on really come from that place that we are already interconnected. I mean, there was a wonderful study, and of all places, the New England Journal of Medicine by Nicholas Christakis from Harvard. And he found that we are so interconnected that if your friends are obese or depressed, you're 45% more likely to be obese or depressed yourself. If your friends' friends are obese or depressed, you're 25% more likely. And if your friends' friends are, you're 10% more likely, even if you've never met them. That's how interconnected we are. And so we're learning that one of the primary determinants of our health and our well-being is a sense of connection and community. Anything that brings us together is healing. Even the word healing comes from the root to make whole. Yoga comes from the Sanskrit to yoke, to unite, to bring together. These are really old ideas that we're rediscovering. And there are literally tens of thousands of studies that show that people who are lonely and depressed and anxious and isolated, which again I think is the real epidemic in our culture, are 3 to 10 times more likely to get sick and die prematurely than those who have a sense of love and connection and community. And I don't know anything that has that powerful an impact. So what that helped me reframe was that the time that I spend with my friends and family and loved ones is not a luxury to do after you've done all the important stuff. It is the important stuff. And it can help us remind ourselves that these are things that really have a more powerful determinant on our health, our well-being, and our happiness than anything. And to the degree that you can find that sense of inner peace, to the degree that you can love yourself, then you have that much more love to share with other people, and the more effective you'll be in the world, and the more powerful you'll be, because you're not giving your power away to everyone else who you think has what you need. You've got it already. And the paradox is you can accomplish even more without getting stressed and sick in the process when you come from that place, from that realization.
Thank you, Dr. Ornish.